thank you for joining us for this Comedy on Health panel. I am extremely excited about this panel. As a little tidbit, what I look at with Comedy on Health, I try to look forward to at least something every day, if not every week, and this is the thing I looked forward to weeks ago, so I'm happy that we're all here. What I want to start with is let's do a little intro with each of you to the audience. We'll start with you on that side, Emma. Give us a minute or two about yourself, and then we'll dive right into the panel.
Okay, hi guys. Thank you for being here. My name is Emma Willmann. I'm a comedian and actress based out of New York. I'm originally from a really small town in Maine. I have ADHD, dyslexia, and I'm gonna kind of, oh, thank you, I appreciate that. Is that for ADHD? Whatever, okay, back at you. Also, full transparency on the mental health front, I just stopped taking my ADHD pills yesterday, so woo! This is the first time I've done a talk for it, but here we go. How I'm going to tie things into mental health too, and I went to grad school at the New School for Media Studies. I've been a professional performer for maybe, I think it was about 8 years, but I started becoming aware of mental health when my life was very destabilized, probably in like 3rd or 4th grade, and I think I never put like validity to the stuff that I was going through in terms of like, I had an abusive, oh, this is awkward me going first too, because watch me get really personal and then everyone else keeps it super casual. Like, I'm literally just gonna leave. But, so I had an abusive stepmom and like some traumatizing things like very sick family members, anorexia, sexual abuse. But in parallel, while that stuff was happening, I always had access to so much wealth that I think there was never, to me, I had a hard time confronting like that I was having mental health problems because I was so fortunate in other areas that I felt uncomfortable addressing them because I was just also so lucky. So that's part of some context for as I'm talking about mental health also, so I would say to contextualize me, white, wealthy, and dyslexic. Boom, on to you guys.
Thanks, and we're going to dive deeper into all of that.
I pray to God that's kind of how we were supposed to do it.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like, I'm a Sagittarius, moving on. But.
All right.
And I'm sober too.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and very like sexually open-minded, and I'm done. Okay.
Anyone? I'm also sexually minded. Hi, my name is Christina Martinez. I am a writer, actor, comedian. This is my favorite part to say. Award-winning art critic. Thank you. I was born. I'm from East LA. My parents are from Mexico, so I'm also a first-generation mixed-race Mexican immigrant. Don't let my California accent fool you. Yeah, it's funny. I have made my career as a journalist and an art critic before I ever even thought about doing comedy. And, like most comedians, I did not have a kick-ass childhood. You got the royal flush of sort of structural, personal trauma abuses. And I always thought that, like, being born in LA, but I always felt like that the industry, that performing, that was just not something that people like me got to do. Poor people, Mexican people. And in my early 30s, I just went to an open mic and I was on a track. I had a career. And I just lost my mind. And I was like, oh no, this is it. So I made a total kind of pivot in my early 30s. And it's been awful. But it's so worth it. And I feel grateful that for a while I had like a dream job because it was someone else's dream. And I'm so much happier doing bombing in like a little theater in front of 12 people than I was doing something that wasn't true to myself. So thanks for having me.
Very cool. Thank you. Sabrina.
Hey, I'm Sabrina Jalees. Thank you guys for sticking around for us, despite the fact that we have a man on the stage. Our apologies.
I apologize.
Yeah,
He's a good one. We got him vetted. I lived a life with zero trauma till Delta lost my luggage last night, and then I got put. in this
Pretty
panel.
fucking, you win. That's pretty
I got
fucking.
put in this panel because I'm dealing with it really well.
Yeah.
I bought this outfit 30 minutes ago. I started doing stand-up as a teenager, and immediately just, I lost my mind. I think that the hook of being able to talk about things that that people joked about me about, things that I was supposed to be embarrassed about, and owning them on stage and being the one to sort of claim that part of me turned these things that I was so embarrassed about, like having a mustache or a Pakistani family, like in the post 9/11 Islamophobia era, or more recently now, suffering, I'd like you all to gasp, a miscarriage. Yeah, it sucks. But being able to talk about these things on stage, turning these things from embarrassing to empowering, has been one of the lights of my life. So it's so nice to be here talking about that sort of ownership.
Great, thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here. It's great to have you. And what I want to dive into and start with is...
Oren, you don't have us. We have you.
You do. Believe me, I know. Believe me.
Anyone want to just shout mean things to the man on stage? It's
Yeah, just go for it. Go for it.
This is a safe
Yeah, please.
space to
It
be
is
mean
safe.
to Oren
Good, yeah.
specifically.
Yeah. But I still want everybody here to have a chance to speak. So maybe afterwards, maybe after
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
said what
yeah.
you want to say, then just let the attacking come. It's good, it's fair.
I'm going to
ready.
lean out of the bit now. For now.
I do want to dive into something that each of you touched on, and it really is about kind of the power of comedy. Now, I think we're all kind of constantly reminded about how comedy itself serves more than just an art form. I get emails a lot with some of the sites that we run about cancer patients, parents of kids who have leukemia, who read the stuff we write, who watch our videos, and it helps them through the pain. And that's how I get reminded every day about the power of comedy. I would love, starting with you, Sabrina, to talk about how you destigmatize certain issues on stage. Maybe talk about your writing process or things that you talk about on stage that have sort of an overlap of health and comedy with them.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I gravitate towards with stand-up is, or not one of the things, I think the central thing is connection. I feel like a lot of, when it comes to health issues or any sort of queerness, I like to use the word queer in a way where you're all queer, baby. You know, anything that makes you feel different, the central struggle of it is this idea of feeling alone. And so for me, oftentimes when I'm writing about the thing that I'm thinking about the most, which is the thing that if we were sitting at an airport bar having a conversation, I would say to you, and you would say to me the thing that was making you feel alone, and we would feel less alone. So these days, I have a beautiful 5-year-old son named Wolfie. My wife carried him. I threw some jizz inside of her body, and just the recipe worked. And I was like, well, this is easy. So I was like, let's see if the magic trick works on my body. And I mean, immediately I put the jizz inside, and the little butch workers in my uterus must have been like, we have the ingredients! And they started building away, and I had this pregnancy that I also felt like I was dealing with this kind of internalized homophobia of like being a butch woman, being like, I'm getting pregnant feels like hearing The Rock say he wants to wear hoop earrings and a dress for 9 months. and then losing the baby, and then having that appointment, which was, you know, one of the worst moments of my life, sitting there at the doctor's, and there's no heartbeat, and there's a dead baby inside of you. It's like the ultimate reverse of the sweepstakes you thought you were going to win. Now you're just bleeding into a diaper. And the loneliness in that whole, around healthcare and women and fertility, the lack of education. I know Phoebe was talking about the lack of talking about women who don't want to have a child. I feel like on every end, there's just a lack of talking. There's this idea that you're not supposed to talk about pregnancy until it's like guaranteed. Like I told a friend's mother that I was pregnant, and then I told her I lost the baby. She goes, now do you wish you hadn't said anything? And I wanted to push her down the stairs and be like, bitch, now do you wish you hadn't said anything? I mean, in the care, there's a lack of care. Getting the abortion to have this little baby that was going to be my baby removed from my body, I'm hobbling to the elevator, and the lady rushes towards me, Miss Jalees, and I'm bleeding in this diaper. I'm holding my wife's hand. We're crying. She goes, "You forgot about your copay." I was like, the only reason to run to me with that energy in that moment would have been to be like, Miss Jalees, the baby, it's alive! It's dancing! So just talking about these moments, it's not to say that was a funny moment to be laying there having this baby that's no longer gonna be our baby. It's now our dead baby removed from my body. There was nothing sadder than that moment, but there's also nothing more beautiful I feel I can do with that moment than to talk about it and make maybe someone else in here who's had that experience feel less lonely and feel less other about it. So, yeah. The applause breaks, they make you feel good.
And Christina, how about you in terms of your process and what you've opened up with on stage?
Thinking, I really buried the lead I didn't do any lead in my intro, but I'm also a cancer survivor. Oh, wow. I had colon cancer maybe 11 or 12 years ago now, which was also a big part of, I got cancer and ended an 8-year relationship and got fired from my cool art world dream job all in the same year. So, but I could not imagine that being, I don't know, I'm so grateful for it. If your life is falling apart, I'm so excited for you because I think you just gotta break down in order to go forward. And I don't really have like a pet cause or disease that I would say I process through my stand-up. It's not like, I'm here to destigmatize sebaceous filaments, but it takes a second, the sebaceous filaments. But I don't know, writ large, I would say I'm so fucking against shame. And I use comedy to be like, fuck, no, and I don't even talk about my cancer in my act. I wrote a book about it, but yeah, there's so. But I think like the point of what you said, like just being yourself is so important. Like I don't make a lot of cancer jokes, but the fact that people do has been so big for me. The fact that other
and you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, the fact that other comedians have like found stand-up as their outlet. I think like Tig Notaro doing that like famous set at Largo when she got her cancer diagnosis. That was right around the time I had mine, and I was just like, oh my God, like you can do anything, like you really can. Like you on the stage with a microphone, you can say whatever the fuck you want. You alone with a piece of paper, like you can write whatever you want. And that was just a huge light bulb moment for me. I would say if there's anything in particular I just like deal with day to day in my work and in my stand-up and in my writing, it's shame. And it's like there's no reason for it. There's no evolutionary reason or advantage or function to it. And it's like, that needs to be gotten rid of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Emma, for you, when you're planning out an act or when you're deciding to open up on stage in one of your routines, how do you balance what you decide to talk about, that sort of pressure to be funny, but also your desire to open up with something that's very personal to you? How's that balance between trying to land the joke and trying to talk about something that's very sensitive to you?
It's tricky. I feel like I have to be really cognitive of whether or not I've actually processed something for me to be able to then perform about it and present it in a way that is comfortable for me and comfortable for other people. It has to be like something that I've already come to peace with before I can begin to share it. And I wish that I could do those things more in unison, but for me with comedy and humor and mental health too, and even getting it into an act, I think humor really allows for like resilience to deal with things that maybe I wouldn't have been able to deal with otherwise. And it really like will allow me to step back and get out of my head. Like I remember one of the first moments where I appreciated the power of finding something funny where it just snapped me out of my head. And I was like, you get like a brief moment of being like, I'm happy to be here when you're laughing at something. not even like just in like any moment when something's off and then you find humor in it, it allowed me to like cope with it and then get through it and then get to a point where then I can present it on stage. And I appreciate too, like when people are watching a performer do something, they get to pick and choose what they then relate and respond to. So it's a way of like presenting these concepts where other people then aren't on the line for saying, I've been through that too. Then they get to pick and be like, okay, I've also had that experience. Through hearing it with someone else, it kind of gives a safe space for it to be brought up that's a little less intense for the person not performing it to be like, I've also felt that and then had that dialogue. But I had this really distinct memory where I found something funny at just like the strangest time. I was in 8th grade and I had tried to kill myself. So I had overdosed on Tylenol. And I had this really, I know it's like kind of hacky to say, but I had like a awful stepmother. And I remember I had called out to her and I was ODing, and then the ambulance came, picked me up, and I was in the ambulance with the stepmother that I had been trying to get away from. And I'm from really rural Maine, so we're going through the backwoods from my house to the hospital, and my stepmom had brought me a Discman. And I was listening to it, and I'm sick, they're doing the charcoal, and it was Aaliyah. And I had a scratch on the CD. And the song that was stuck on repeat, I swear to God, was Try Again by Aaliyah.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm ODing from a suicide attempt with this woman, and then we're just driving through the backwoods of Maine, and I literally have and she's just going, if at first you don't succeed, da-da-da-da-da, try again. and I remember being like, and then I kind of forgot about it because I was all foggy, but I just remember that moment of me laughing, being like, the absurdity of this is so, and then like the times where I've really been like, I'm so happy to be alive, well, just being like just like little things that are off or a little strange that I'll find humor in, or even in relationships, like, my relationship now, I feel like my girlfriend and I, we laugh a lot, and like that allows us to then, even if there's like tension, because humor diffuses tension too, so along with allowing you to be like resilient and get through other things, it'll diffuse tension of an argument. Like say we're arguing about something and I'm being really ridiculous, sometimes it's not appropriate, but we'll joke, and then we laugh, and then it allows us to like, I feel like it's such a reset. Mm-hmm. And it's also a reset, like, you can put yourself like, by watching comedy too, like I had this deal with myself where I'd be like, okay, before I get really depressed and go into some type of spiral, this is before I ever did stand-up, I was like, I'm gonna watch, Cat Williams has this joke called Poor Little Tink Tink. Mm-hmm. And I was like, before I go into depression, before I have a drink, before I whatever it is, it's so fucked up too. I was in this like luxury condo in Puerto Rico and like drinking at like 8 a.m. and I was like, it's just, mental health is wild. And it's so individual, but it also is societal and so many things. But my experience, and I remember, and I'll wrap it up, I remember being like, okay, here's the deal. Before you go into depression, you have to at least watch Poor Little Tink Tink, and if you're still depressed after that, drink up. And I promise you, 10 out of 10 times, by the time he got to, if you've seen it, there's a line where he goes, the last place you want to be in a foot race is behind a motherfucker with no foot. By the time I got to that, I was like, and to set the scene at this point, I was really overweight. I was like in the closet, like lots of stuff was going on. I would be like, tink, tink. And then I would be able to go on through my day. And like that to me is like, boom, power. I don't know Cat Williams. I don't know Tink Tink. But there I was laughing at that, and that allowed me to snap out of my head. And that is what I think, like, then back to your question, if I can in any way do anything to then offer that to someone, mm-hmm. then I'm like, well, all right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not so virtuous, that's the whole reason I do stand-up, but like that is something I try to think about when I talk about heavier things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Appreciate it.
And I love that you also shared an outlet outside of stage time that kind of helps you cope and helps you deal with things, which is going to be the next question.
For me to even get to it on stage, it has to be outside of stage first.
Absolutely. So, Christina, that question for you is outside of stage time. Yeah. What other outlets do you have that help you cope day to day?
Oh, I mean, it's writing for sure. Like I had a different type of writing career before I did stand-up, and I, still work as an art critic. Which I love. I tried so hard to like leave all that behind, but what I found is that in just developing a comedic voice, then that actually just like bled into everything else that I was doing. So I wanted to be a full-time comedian so bad, and I was like, ugh, I have to go review these art shows. But what was so nice about finding my voice comedically is that it started to infect the writing. So even when I still had a hard time figuring out how to like joke about cancer on stage. And you get to the point where sometimes it's like, I was okay with it. Like it'd been a few years, like I had processed things, but it was still hard to like make it funny. You know what I mean? Then the worst thing is when you're like, I'm good, I'm gonna put this into a joke format and we're gonna have this communal experience, and then everyone just goes, oh. I have to be like, no, I'm fine, this is funny, I promise.
Totally.
No, I'm fine, it's funny, cancer's funny.
Totally.
But what was so great is that I'm like, well, I have this whole other, career that like I don't want to abandon. It's a big part of my life. So I wrote a book of essays called Aesthetical Relations. It's available from Hess Press. And the big central essay is about, me having cancer. And I was so pleased because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna write my cancer essay, we should be so grateful that like cancer writing and cancer comedy is even a genre, because it means that we're surviving. But yeah, and I was really pleased and surprised to find that on the page it was funny, and I could talk about, I was like gone for most of it, but there were stories that people told me afterward that I was able to talk about. Like apparently the first thing I said when I woke up after the surgery is I told my friends and family who were all gathered on my bed, like, you may touch the hem of my garment. And apparently I get really flirty and mean when I'm on morphine, so that's a lot of it is just like stories about that.
Right. Yeah. And how about you, Sabrina, in terms of outlets outside of stage time?
Nothing. My 5-year-old Wolfie is like, he can bring me into the present. I feel like off of hearing you guys talk about your experiences, it just feels this sort of like, that humor, that finding the funny moment pulls us right into the present, and we're still alive in the present. You're in that car and you're after this like huge surgery, and I'm like hobbling to the elevator, and in this moment where we can turn to ourselves or our community and say like, it's a fucking crazy world, and find the humor in it, that I think is resilience. Like that we can dance in the rain, which is, I think I just came up with that. Someone write it down.
You can dance in the rain.
It's
That'd be
slippery,
good for
but you
R&B
can.
video.
But I think that's what playing with my son does that for me, because he doesn't have expectations. So we've gone through this second child and trying to like climb up the mountain of making the second child and being pushed down and trying to climb back up again. For him, that is the experience of making a child. Mm-hmm. And so in the loss of it, he just sort of, because we do talk about it with him, which I think is good, and he just sort of has this attitude of like, okay, Baba, we'll have to put another seed in. And it's like, yeah, that's what we have to do. We have to do that. When I ask him if he wants to have kids, he goes, nah, too many needles.
Have you danced in the rain with your son yet?
Oh my gosh, yeah, of
Great.
course.
All
That's
right.
the best. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we have a little less than a minute left, and what I want to do as a final question, we'll start with you, Sabrina, and go down, is can you share with the audience what's an upcoming project or two you're working on, and how can this audience support you?
I'm so glad you asked.
Yes.
I am acting in a movie that is premiering at this festival on Monday. Yeah. And it's called I Used to Be Funny, and it's written and directed by my friend Ali Pankew, who's super brilliant. She directed Feel Good, my friend Mae Martin's show on Netflix, which is also kind of tied into some of the themes we've talked about here. But the movie itself is also sort of about inherited trauma and PTSD, but it's funny. And it stars Rachel Sennett and myself and my friend Caleb Heron.
Great. Okay.
Monday.
Awesome.
Monday.
Oh, and we're having an after party too. We're doing stand-up at it.
Great. Christina?
Hi. Yeah, the best way to support me is follow me on Instagram. I have a couple things coming out later this year. I made a comedy special called How to Bake a Cake in the Digital Age, and that'll be out for the end of the year. And I also filmed a documentary. A camera crew of terrible men lived with me for 2 months, and I can't say where it's going to be yet, but that is coming out at the end of the year. So I'd love if you followed me and supported that when they come out. Oh, what's my handle? There was a, God, my hair looks great. There was a, I just want to do this. Support me by making a GIF of this. It's xtina_Catherine. I think there was some sort of graphic they posted that had our handles on them.
They did. Call of the graphic.
Is the graphic in the bathroom? xtina_Catherine, or talk to me after the panel.
There it is.
There we are.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
Emma.
I'm going to be in a movie with Bobby Cannavale and Robert De Niro called Inappropriate Behavior. It's in Germany right now. I don't know. We don't have a premiere date for the U.S. And then I'm on tour. All my tour dates are at IamEmmaWillmann.com. And I would say real quick, one of the most comfortable ways of talking about like sexuality and kink stuff for me was stand-up, and that was like such a way to like explore sexuality for me, even more than porn. And I just thought of that while we were all talking.
Sabrina, Christina, Emma, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being part of this. Thank you for dealing with me.
Oh, you were great. Let's one time for Oren.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you. Honestly, I was so looking forward to this, and all of you delivered at a high level. I'm so happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys.